There is a specific book in the Library of Congress that contains a detail modern science tries to ignore. It is not a conspiracy blog or a fringe forum. It is the 12th Annual Report of the Bureau of Ethnology, published by the Smithsonian Institution itself in 1894. Inside this dense bureaucratic volume, buried in dry excavation tables, is a record that shouldn't exist. It documents the official government excavation of burial mounds in West Virginia. The archaeologists were not looking for anomalies. They were cataloging Native American history. But what they found in the Kanawha Valley defied the established biological norms of the continent. They didn't just find artifacts. They found a ruling class of human beings whose physical dimensions were statistically impossible for the time period. To understand the shock, you have to look at the location. Charleston, West Virginia, sits in the heart of the ancient Adena culture territory. These were the Mound Builders, a sophisticated society that constructed massive earthworks long before the Roman Empire fell. For decades, settlers and farmers in the Ohio Valley had reported digging up giant bones while plowing fields. Science dismissed these as mastodon bones or tall tales. The Smithsonian sent their own agents to settle the matter and map the sites professionally. The team was led by Colonel P.W. Norris. He was a meticulous man, a serious researcher who had no interest in myths. He oversaw the excavation of the Criel Mound in South Charleston, a massive conical structure standing 33 feet high. Norris employed a vertical shaft method, digging from the summit straight down to the base level. It was dangerous, dirty work. As they descended through the clay layers, they found nothing unusual until they hit the original ground level. At the very bottom of the mound, sealed in a bark-lined timber vault, lay the remains of 11 people. 10 of them were arranged in a spoke-like pattern, feet pointing inward. In the center lay the 11th skeleton, the obvious ruler of this group. Colonel Norris measured the central skeleton himself. In his field report, later published by the Smithsonian, he recorded the length 6 feet, 8 3/4 inches. That is nearly 2 meters and 10 centimeters tall. In the late 1800s, the average male height was barely 5 feet 6. A man approaching 7 feet would have been a biological titan, dwarfing everyone around him, and he wasn't alone. Other reports from the same region mention skeletons of similar stature. The report notes the skeleton had a massive frame. This was not a pathological giant with weak bones. This was a robust, powerful individual buried with high honors, including copper bracelets and lance heads. The archaeology implies he was a king. This discovery presents a massive problem for the standard historical narrative. If the Adena people were a simple egalitarian society, why did they have a genetically distinct elite class that was physically superior to the general population? This is where the story shifts from archaeology to mystery. You would expect a 7-foot prehistoric skeleton to be the centerpiece of a museum. You would expect it to be studied, DNA tested, and displayed as a wonder of ancient America. But if you go to the Smithsonian today, you will not find the Criel Mound giant. You will not find the other large skeletons mentioned in those 19th century county histories. They are not in the display cases. According to official responses over the years, many of these bones crumbled to dust upon exposure to air. Others were lost in cataloging or simply discarded as scientifically irrelevant. The physical evidence has vanished, leaving only the paper trail. Skeptics argue that measurement errors were common in the 1880s. They say the bones separated in the soil, creating gaps that made the skeletons look longer. They claim the giants are just a result of amateur excitement, not biological reality. However, Colonel Norris was not an amateur. The Bureau of Ethnology was the premier scientific body of the United States. The measurements were specific to the 1/4 inch. To dismiss them all as errors is to dismiss the competence of the very institution that built American archaeology. Furthermore, the anatomy described often included other anomalies, such as thicker skulls and massive jawbones. These details appear in hundreds of local newspaper accounts from the era, from New York to Wisconsin. It was a nationwide phenomenon. The Adena Elite theory suggests that a specific lineage of tall individuals ruled the Ohio Valley for centuries. They were buried in the most prominent mounds, often with exotic materials like mica and marine shells imported from thousands of miles away. If they were just random genetic flukes, why were they always the ones in the center of the mounds? Why were they the ones receiving the royal burials? The correlation between extreme height and political power is undeniable in the archaeological record. In the early 20th century, a new curator named Aleš Hrdlička took over the Smithsonian's physical anthropology department. He was a strict adherent to the isolationist theory. He believed humans arrived in America recently and were biologically uniform. Under Hrdlička's tenure, reports of anomalous skeletons stopped appearing in official journals. The focus shifted to standardizing the narrative. The giants were relegated to the realm of folklore and hoax, effectively erased from the scientific conversation. But the 12th Annual Report remains on the shelf. You can read it online today. Page 426 explicitly states the measurement. It stands as a stubborn fact that refuses to align with the modern textbook version of pre-Columbian history. We are left with a disturbing question. Did the Smithsonian actively destroy evidence that contradicted their preferred theory? Or did they simply let these priceless specimens rot away through negligence? Imagine what modern DNA analysis could tell us about the Criel Mound skeleton. We could determine if he belonged to a unique haplogroup. We could see if his height was a pituitary condition or a genetic trait shared by his kin. Instead, we have emptiness. The mound in South Charleston is still there, now a public park surrounded by unsuspecting suburban houses. Children play on the grass, completely unaware of the titan that was pulled from the earth beneath their feet. The disappearance of the skeletons creates a vacuum where speculation thrives. But we don't need to speculate to feel the weight of this mystery. We just need to read the reports written by the men who held the tape measures. Archaeology is supposed to be the search for truth, no matter how uncomfortable it is. If there was a race of 7-foot lords roaming ancient West Virginia, history is far more complex than we are told. The evidence was found, it was measured, it was catalogued, and then it was silenced. The giants of West Virginia are not a myth, they are a missing file in the National Archives. Sometimes the biggest cover-ups aren't about aliens or high technology. They are about simple biological facts that threaten to shatter our fragile understanding of the human timeline. The bones are gone, but the measurements remain.